when watching Oz Flintstones. El regreso de Tony Curtis, one immediately realizes that the film is not merely a nostalgic comedy. It is a curious archaeological dig into the cultural sediment of television history, excavating the bones of a bygone era and breathing new life into them through absurd humor, cinematic precision, and subtle melancholy. On its surface, it appears to be a playful return to bedrock, the city of Stone Age gadgets, loyal friendships, and simple joys. Yet beneath that comedic rock layer lies a deeply human meditation on the artifice of fame, the fragility of identity, and the way societies fossilize their icons. The return of Tony Curtis into this prehistoric microcosm feels almost mythological, as if a creature from a different epoch has wandered into a dream that refuses to end. The genius of the film lies in its refusal to treat nostalgia as comfort. Instead, it treats nostalgia as confrontation. The very first frame captures this with striking irony. Fred Flintstone, surrounded by familiar noise, the grind of stone wheels, the laughter of neighbors, the gentle complaints of Wilma, seems oddly restless. His world, though unchanging, feels smaller. The director cleverly uses exaggerated stillness, freezing certain moments for a second too long, to make the audience feel Fred's unease. It is at this point that Tony Curtis enters, a man who seems to shimmer with the glow of another world. His charm feels both magnetic and misplaced. He arrives in Bedrock as a guest star, but soon becomes a mirror reflecting the anxieties of everyone around him. His presence reminds Fred of his own ordinariness, Barney of his lack of ambition, Wilma of the glamour she once dreamed of, and even Dino of loyalty's limits. It is a subtle critique of how fame infects the everyday, transforming admiration into quiet resentment. From a cinematic standpoint, the way Curtis is introduced is almost poetic. Emerging from a meteorite capsule, he walks through a cloud of glittering dust that evokes the golden age of Hollywood. The music, a jazzy variation of the Flintstones theme, transforms the scene into a surreal collision of epochs. The prehistoric and the modern melt together, producing a sensation of both wonder and discomfort. The entire sequence, though absurd, carries symbolic weight. Curtis represents the intrusion of modern myth into collective simplicity. The director's decision to make his character self-aware, that he is Tony Curtis, playing Tony Curtis, trapped inside bedrock, turns the narrative into a meta-commentary about the absurdity of show business. The scenes that follow oscillate between broad comedy and quiet reflection. One of the most memorable is when Fred takes Curtis on a tour of the bedrock quarry. The dialogue is peppered with jokes about breaking rocks for a living. Yet the subtext is cutting. Curtis, visibly out of place in his polished demeanor, tries to perform humility but fails. His attempt to swing a prehistoric pickaxe ends in a small landslide, which Barney jokingly calls a Hollywood disaster. Laughter fills the scene, but the director lingers on Curtis's face for an extra beat, revealing embarrassment and self-doubt. It's a rare moment of honesty that punctures the film's cartoonish surface. As the narrative progresses, Bedrock itself begins to feel different. The once static world now pulses with the energy of fame, envy, and transformation. Fred becomes obsessed with being recognized by Curtis, convinced that a shared friendship could elevate him beyond his ordinary existence. This theme of imitation, of trying to become someone else to escape oneself, runs throughout the film. Fred's efforts to act cool around Curtis, dressing in absurdly fancy animal pelts, speaking in exaggerated Hollywood slang, mirror society's perpetual struggle to mimic the unattainable glamour of media icons. The comedy lies in his clumsiness, but the pain lies in its familiarity. The dinner sequence, one of the film's emotional high points, encapsulates this perfectly. Wilma and Betty have prepared an elaborate meal using Stone Age haute cuisine, while Curtis, charming as ever, praises their efforts with exaggerated courtesy. Fred, growing insecure, attempts to tell a joke that falls flat. The silence that follows is excruciating. Curtis, sensing the tension, raises a toast to ordinary greatness, a line that could have easily come from a press interview. The moment is both moving and hollow. It demonstrates how even sincerity becomes performance in a world defined by spectacle. Watching this, one cannot help but think of how celebrities often perform humility for the audience, turning authenticity into another form of theater. This film, hidden behind its cartoon colors, captures that phenomenon more sharply than many live-action dramas. The turning point arrives during the Bedrock talent show, where Fred and Curtis reluctantly become co-hosts. The sequence is a masterpiece of tonal balance. Beneath the laughter and slapstick choreography, there is an undercurrent of existential rivalry. Fred wants recognition. Curtis wants relevance. Both men crave applause, but for different reasons. One for validation, the other for resurrection. When Curtis begins to dance, his movements are elegant but slightly offbeat, as if time itself has betrayed him. Fred's clumsy dance, by contrast, ignites laughter and genuine joy from the crowd. It is at that moment that Curtis realizes the cruel irony of fame. The world often prefers the unpolished, because imperfection feels more human. His applause fades into contemplation, and the shot lingers on his face as the laughter of Bedrock fills the air. The film's emotional crescendo comes near the end, during a quiet night scene between Curtis and Barney. Sitting by the river, Curtis confesses that he doesn't know how to leave. Barney, in his typical simplicity, replies that nobody really leaves Bedrock. They just become stories. The line resonates deeply, transforming what could have been a simple cameo into a meditation on legacy. Curtis's silence that follows is haunting, his eyes reflecting both gratitude and fear. The brilliance of this exchange is that it reduces the grandeur of fame to something primal, the human need to be remembered. What gives El Regreso de Tony Curtis its staying power is its tone. It refuses to choose between irony and empathy. Every laugh is laced with a hint of sadness. Every sentimental moment carries an undercurrent of absurdity. It's as if the film understands that comedy and tragedy are not opposites, but reflections of the same human condition. Even the supporting characters, Wilma, Betty, and the ever-loyal Dino, are given small arcs that mirror the film's central theme. Wilma learns to appreciate Fred's flawed authenticity. Betty rediscovers her own wit, and Dino becomes a silent observer of human foolishness. Together they form a microcosm of how ordinary life endures even in the presence of spectacle. The film's use of color and sound deserves special mention. The pastel palette feels warmer than in previous Flintstones productions, suggesting the hazy comfort of memory. The sound design alternates between exaggerated cartoon effects and moments of real silence. These silences, rare in animated comedy, create emotional depth. They allow the audience to breathe, to think, to feel. It's a cinematic rhythm closer to European art cinema than to American animation, giving the film a strangely timeless quality. From a personal standpoint, what fascinates me most about El Regreso de Tony Curtis is how it transforms a simple crossover into an existential parable. It reminded me of conversations with older actors who once dominated the screen but later faded into obscurity. They often describe fame as a room that never lets you leave. It just grows quieter. Watching Curtis navigate Bedrock feels like watching someone walk through that room, touching the walls, remembering what it felt like to matter. His final decision, to remain in Bedrock, teaching Fred how to act natural, feels both absurd and poetic. It is as if he has finally escaped the tyranny of performance by accepting it as part of existence. The closing sequence, where Fred, Barney, and Curtis sit together watching the sunrise over the rocky horizon, is unexpectedly moving. No dialogue, just the hum of wind and the faint sound of birds. The camera pulls back slowly, revealing the smallness of their figures against the vast prehistoric landscape. It's a breathtaking image of humility. After all the laughter, chaos, and ego, the world continues. Indifferent yet beautiful. That is the film's final wisdom. Fame crumbles, but friendship endures, and laughter, however foolish, remains the only proof that we ever lived. From a critical perspective, El Regreso de Tony Curtis stands as a rare fusion of nostalgia and critique, humor, and philosophy. It invites us to laugh at our obsession with celebrity while gently exposing its emptiness. The Flintstones, those eternal cavemen of modernity, once again remind us that progress changes our tools, not our hearts. Watching this film, I found myself thinking about how every generation creates its own bedrock, a place where simplicity battles spectacle, where ordinary lives carry extraordinary truths. In that sense, Tony Curtis's return is not just a plot device, it is a metaphor for the persistence of dreams. Even when the cameras stop, even when time turns us to stone, the stories we tell about ourselves keep echoing through the ages. And perhaps that is what makes this film unforgettable. It laughs at the vanity of fame, mourns its cost, and yet celebrates the ridiculous beauty of wanting to matter in a world that keeps moving forward.